up there. I always go to the wrong one. And with that, we are live for episode 84, 85, one of the two. I have to check, make sure my numbers are correct. Let's call it 85.
It's 85.
Bill, how you doing this morning?
Doing good. Definitely doing good. Excited to talk about this episode. There's a lot of cool stuff to talk about. It's really coming to a head. We got 2 episodes left after the one we talked about today, Through the Valley of Shadows. And I'm curious to hear what you have to say. I haven't talked to you about this episode at all since it aired on Thursday night. So definitely eager to hear what you have to say. There's been a lot of talk on Twitter about it, a lot of skirting around spoilers, letting people get to see it. So hopefully, if you haven't watched it, if you're not caught up on Discovery, you should not be watching this live stream, especially this week, because there's a lot of spoilery stuff. There's a lot of big developments, a lot of things happening that you should discover through the natural way of watching the show, if you ask us. So come back to us if you haven't caught up. But before we get into that, where are you on your rewatch? I know you watched Force of Nature because you tweeted about it.
Yes.
Is that where you are?
That's where I am. The next episode, let me check. I think it's Inheritance. It looks like a Data episode. Yeah, I tweeted about Force of Nature because I feel like lately I've been just tweeting about episodes that I find that are good and solid episodes. So I wanted to kind of go to the other side of the spectrum where I didn't really, it was kind of middle of the road for me and I didn't really enjoy the episode. So I wanted to just hear what people thought about the episode. So.
Yeah, from what I kind of gathered in checking out the responses, I think most people were pretty in line with that. It's not necessarily seen as certainly not seen as a classic
Right.
by any means, but it tries to do some interesting stuff. Like it has this environmental message, and they try to play with this idea of a warp speed limit. Yeah, which lasts about 2 episodes. There's an episode coming up where I don't remember which one it actually happens in, but they are told by an admiral, like, you can forego the speed limit and go warp 9 or whatever for this one crisis, and it's never mentioned again after that. So that's pretty unusual. Like Star Trek's obviously like always playing with continuity, and there's always things that connect, and usually they make mostly they make sense. Like you can reason them into making sense. This is like a rare misstep where they tried to do something and we're like, yeah, we're just not going to do that, and just kind of leave it, as a one-off kind of weird thing, which makes this episode unusual for sure. But when I think about it, I actually think more about, like, I kind of mentioned it on Twitter. There's some neat little like casual stuff with Data and Geordi talking about, like, isn't that the episode we're talking about, like Training Spot, and then
Geordi's trying to keep his engines as efficient as possible, and I like that kind of camaraderie and that competitiveness with the other ships. That's one thing I like about it too.
Yeah, we had a conversation on Trek Live a ways back, and I forget, it might have been the Comfort Food episodes conversation, and one of the things I remember talking about was that I really like the casual Star Trek stuff, like the more day in the life look at like what it's like being on these ships and what's like, living life in the 24th century, and not just going from crisis to crisis all the time. And that stands out to me for that reason, because you get a little taste of that. Not huge stakes going on. Talking about like being competitive with another chief engineer on another ship somewhere that you have like a history with, and something as mundane as like training your cat. Like Geordi talking to Data about, you really need to train this cat. This cat's out of control. Like that's cool stuff that you don't necessarily get a lot of in Star Trek. And it's not enough to save the episode, and it's not enough to like put it into like good or great territory. But it just goes to show that even like the most middle of the road kind of blah Star Trek usually has. There's something in it that if you like the characters and you like the world and you like being there for it, then you're probably going to find something that you can kind of take away from it with.
Yeah, and kind of one more thing about kind of the warp speed limit. I thought like during the episode, like it was just this region.
Could be.
And that's what I thought, but I guess it's, it's the whole, I don't know, the whole universe, the whole Federation space is like this. So I thought it could have been fixed if they didn't. This region is thin, so maybe something like that. But
yeah, certainly if they could have come up with a way to make it more isolated to an area of space, because something about that area of space makes it particularly vulnerable,
right,
and it's particularly damaged, then you can kind of run with it and keep it in the canon, so to speak, moving forward. But yeah, when you try to do it that broadly and you're not really committed to it, it kind of falls flat. And the episode even kind of, I think, is weakened in the long run because of the fact that they don't do anything with it. The episode could have been huge if they actually, kept that storyline moving forward and made it a part of the universe, with the other shows and the future of TNG and all that. Right. Like if they laid that down as a ground rule and stuck with it, Force of Nature would be like a game changer.
Yep.
But because it's forgotten so quickly, it makes it even more forgettable. The episode stakes. They try to play with really big, like massive stakes, but don't really capitalize on them. So yeah, I'm glad you tweeted about it, because it's an interesting episode to talk about for all these things. It's another, like I said, even like the middle of the road blah episodes. There's things to chew on, and there's interesting conversations to have about them.
Yep.
And that's about as like kind of forgettable and middle of the road as you can possibly get. And there's plenty to talk about. So
yep.
That's why we love talking about Star Trek. That's why we do
Exactly.
this show. There's every corner of everything you can find in the universe of Star Trek. You can find a really cool conversation to have. So. Force of Nature is average, but interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm nowhere on mine. I know you're going to ask me, but I haven't taken the leap of the movie. I'm kind of maybe dragging my feet a little bit with Discovery coming to a head. I might kind of maybe sort of wait until Discovery ends and then go full bore into the TOS movies and dive into that world and try to knock them out in a weekend or two, and then go full bore into TNG in like the end of April, beginning of May. That's kind of the plan for right now. What I am toying with doing is rewatching everything from season 2 up to this point, leading into the finale. That's tempting to me,
right?
At this point, I'm really in the nitty gritty of, if you're in our Discord channel, you'll see me do this every once in a while. I'll post like episode rankings. You know me, I love that stuff. I get obsessed with that. I've done it on Twitter here and there. After every couple episodes, I'll post like as of now, this is what I'm thinking. So I'm definitely really trying to come to terms with where these episodes like slot and how they fit into the bigger picture. So it's tempting to want to go back and rewatch the season, or maybe even the whole show.
Right.
Start with Welcome Hello and just plow forward and try to time it so I'm coming up on the finale when I'm finishing up.
Right.
But we'll see. I don't know how ambitious I'll get with that, and I don't know if I'll go back to season 1. But I'm pretty sure I'll try to do all of season 2 before episode 14 in a couple weeks airs. But yeah, stay tuned. I'm sure episode rankings are coming. Whether Dan wants to or not, he's going to do them too.
Oh man, that's going to be tough.
He's going to have to try.
Yeah.
It's part of the Trek Live code for seasons, from moving on from now on. Yeah, stay tuned for that. That's coming down the pike.
Yep.
At some point here. Mm-hmm.
So, shall we just jump in?
Yeah, let's do it.
What are your thoughts? Oh, I can go.
You first.
I thought I loved it. It's tough because I feel like this back half of the season has been so tough because there's just been, I feel like, great episode after great episode and solid episode after solid episode. So it's tough, like you mentioned, to rank these things. As far as the episode itself goes, I think we talked about taking if Discovery wades into canon or they cannonball into it, they cannonballed into this.
Yeah, they did.
The things that go on with Pike and the B plot with Burnham and Spock was great. If you call it a B plot, I feel like there were two A's. It was they were both
equal.
both really strong. So, yeah, it was a great episode.
Yeah, I really liked it too. I think you kind of said it there. I think both halves of it really worked well together. I think they're pretty even-handed. I didn't feel like there was a dominant A plot or a B plot. I feel like the Pike stuff certainly comes to mind because it's so impactful, and it's if you care about that character and if you care about TOS, that's some huge stuff that they're showing you.
Yes.
So that certainly weighs heavily, but the Burnham and Spock stuff probably there's probably more screen time spent on that.
Yeah.
And that's impactful too, and that's moving the storyline of the season forward in a big way. Those two characters and the Control storyline and what's going on with Section 31, like they work well together. I think they both have big stakes, obviously, and are pretty even-handed as far as screen time goes. And I think that worked well. And I also liked a lot of the little moments that are kind of sprinkled into it. I loved the scene in the mess hall with the crew, kind of casually eating lunch, eating dinner, whatever it was, and playing a game.
Reno's back.
Yep, Reno's back. She's part of that group. She's talking about working in engineering and trying to work with Stamets on a solution to this whole thing, with the problem of the season, basically. Working for a big picture solution here. I loved the scene between Reno and Kohler in sickbay. I thought that was really good.
Yeah.
Really well written, really well acted between those two characters. It felt like it moved that forward in a way it needed to move it forward. We got to know a little bit more about Reno, which I feel like we needed to do if she's going to stick around or be a factor moving forward at all. I feel like that kind of character development was needed for that character. And it was in service of the bigger picture as well. Like, it wasn't just isolated to, let's throw some like token character development in for this, recurring character. It was important to her, and it beefed her character up, but it also helped the bigger picture storyline of Culber and Stamets and that struggle and that storyline to move forward as well, which I think was well done. So I liked pretty much every corner of this episode. I won't lie, at the very beginning of it, the reveal that, it's not like we've spent a lot of time on Borth, as they kind of pronounce it in this episode. It's in Rightful Heir. It's kind of mentioned throughout Star Trek here and there in the 24th century stuff. But I was kind of, in just the initial reveal of this planet is the home of time crystals, like the Klingons have the sanctuary that they protect, and they have this technology or this mineral that allows for time travel. I was kind of like, what, really? The Klingons have this? This material that allows for like casual time travel. We haven't. That's never been a problem.
That's
before.
Really convenient.
Yeah, that took me a few minutes to like come to terms with and be like, how does that work? But I feel like they did a good enough job of establishing that the monks and that sanctuary felt to me like it was remote and protected enough and othered enough from like typical Klingon society that it's not easy. It's not going to be easy for Klingons, like rogue Klingons, bad Klingons, Klingons with bad intentions to get access to these things and to cause havoc. Not to mention that I think, I don't know, like if Klingons are obsessed with honor, and if you're a good, even bad Klingon, if you want to do things the honorable way, I don't know that time travel and sneaking around the timeline is Klingon. The Klingon path, that's not very Klingon-esque.
Yeah.
Good way to put it. So it works. I can deal with it. I really liked the character of I'm blanking on his name, but it's Laurel and Tyler's son. Sort of affected by the timey-wimey-ness of this cavern, this sanctuary with the time crystals, who somehow has grown up in no time. But that's Kenneth Mitchell, who's played a couple of Klingons in the show, which is really cool casting. I think his
Jeffrey
performance. Yes, he is our modern day. Yep, Jeffrey Combs, Vaughn Armstrong, all these actors. We have one in Discovery, which is awesome. These guys keep popping up to play different aliens of sometimes the same species. Really cool, but I think his performance did a really good job of selling the otherness of this sanctuary, and that it's not accessible and it's not easy to get to, and you need to pull a lot of strings, and you need like the head of the Klingon government to say, yeah, you can go in there, and it's not operated and protected by your run-of-the-mill Klingons, which helped me get there.
Yeah, I think that's the kind of the point. they were trying to establish that this is not just like an everyday occurrence. I mean, the Chancellor just doesn't come out for anyone, or any place. And these, to me, this whole planet just doesn't feel Klingon to me. So that's why I was taken out a bit, like you said, but I think I was pulled back in because it didn't feel as Klingon to me as we've seen before. So I think in the end it definitely worked for me, but I think they had to work for it for a little bit.
I think so too. And time travel stuff always leads to these kind of questions. I mean, we've been wading into time travel for the last few episodes here. It's kind of become clear that time travel is going to factor into the season pretty heavily. Time travel is bound to give you headaches, and this episode's kind of no exception. I love the Pike stuff that we're going to talk about in a minute because we're going to get to that quickly. But the idea of accepting this crystal seals your fate. How does that work? Like, what does that mean? Like, there's a lot of questions that just time travel by its very nature, when you start getting into the mechanics of how it works and why things get locked into place and how you can change things and what's destiny and what's not, that leads to a lot of questions that are fun to think about and to bandy back and forth about, but they definitely lead to questions, and I do have questions about it, but I'm okay with it, and I'm able to forgive it because I think it serves the interests of the show. And that scene that I'm going to ask you about in a second is makes the whole. I mean, I've loved Pike all season, as it's well documented on these episodes that we do, but that makes the whole Pike inclusion in Discovery worth it to me. Yeah, it adds context to the character in that story. So because of how much goodness it brings about and what it does for that character and that storyline in the big picture of Star Trek, I'm okay to accept it and run with it. Yeah. So what did you think of the Pike storyline on Borth and what he had to do and what we saw?
I thought it was great. I thought it was awesome. I loved his relentless attitude that he was going to get it. Like, I'm not leaving this place without the crystal, and goes toe to toe with the Klingons, and it's awesome. And I think it's a cool storyline. It's a cool storyline to kind of tie to TOS, but I think this might be the turning point for Pike, and maybe you can kind of touch on that. But I'm just curious to see are we going to see the same Pike, in the first couple episodes where he's like oozing with charisma and all this stuff. Is this the turning point where he starts to go downhill, or I don't know. But I thought it was awesome. Yeah, overall.
Totally agree. And you would think he's got to be affected by this, right? Like, this has to kind of change your perspective and the decisions that you make. And although maybe it makes you even more kind of fearless and more confident because you know what your future is, you know what's coming, right? Like you have an idea of what's going to happen eventually. So until you get there, until he's promoted to admiral and on a cadet ship training mission, he knows he's pretty much going to be okay. He's gonna live to see another day. Yeah. So maybe it affects you that way too, but it has to impact your psyche. And I think after that happened, when he's back on the ship, you see it. You can kind of see like the weight on his shoulders, and that it's had a big impact. And I think the best thing in this episode is Anson Mount's performance in that scene. I think like he went for it. Like he played the emotion like pretty heavily. He didn't play it subtly. He didn't play it quietly. He swung for the fences with it, and I think he nailed it. I think he was really, really good. I think the gravity of what he saw and that landed. And I think I saw Anson Mount say in an interview, I don't know if you ever watch it. I think they posted on YouTube and all over like Star Trek social media. The next day after the episode airs, there's interviews with a member of the cast. Have you ever watched any of them? They're usually about 25 minutes long. And this week, of course, it was Anson Mount they were talking to, and he talked about like what you find out in this episode about what happens to Pike makes it not so much like a tragedy as much as it is a triumph. Like it's a choice. It's not like an accident that happens. Like he makes a decision to allow that to be kind of written and accepts his own fate to serve the greater good. Like not only did he like before there was an element of heroism to it for sure, because he was on his ship of cadets, and he stayed, like they kind of tell the story in the menagerie that he stays in the room and saves as many people as he can, and takes the Delta rays, and it does him in. There's certainly heroism to that, but adding this element of like making a choice to embrace that and bring it on adds a whole new dimension to Pike's fate, and I think that does a lot of good for the character, and adds a lot of context to the menagerie. I think it's impossible to watch the menagerie the same way again,
right?
Knowing what led him, to be in that chair.
Right.
Yeah. What did you think of the production design of like the chair and the way he looked, and like did they?
I think they did a great job. I think it definitely looked. It looked like him, but it was like a modern day, like like if they had the budget, that's what they would have done.
That's what they would have done.
It feels futuristic, but it pays homage to what we seen before, and it's just it's unbelievable almost that they went that direction, and it's crazy.
Yeah, I was in disbelief. Like when I kind of saw it coming.
Yeah.
When like I kind of figured they were going there when he was walking down the hallway with Klingon, and kind of the dialogue was kind of selling that maybe we were going to go this way, but yeah, it's still pretty impactful when I'm thinking of that shot where he's like standing in that hallway and he turns around and the chair is like rolling out.
And you can hear it
really going here.
Yeah, it's like wow. We're going
pretty
there.
Yeah, it's pretty gutsy, and it's something. It's a choice that is gutsy, because you have to walk that line, like you said. It has to, if you're going to play with this, like this, kind of like they did with the Thelosians. It has to be. If you're going to go there, you're going to have to make it exactly what you said. If they had the budget in the '60s, this is what they would have done. Like you can't go beyond that. You can't get too sexy with it. You can't get too aggressive with redesigning and correcting things. It's got to be, a spruced up version.
It's got to fit in
what was there before. Yeah. It's got to look naturally an extension of what they were capable of doing, 53 years ago. And I think that's what this was done. That's what was done so perfectly about this, and that's what I think was done so perfectly about, if memory serves, with Vina and the Thelosian stuff there. They didn't get to. They I guess learned their lesson with what they did with the Klingons. Like that's what got them in trouble with Klingons with a lot of people. They people like it was too much of a change and not enough of like that idea, like just a spruced up version, take advantage of the better production values and more capability. And I think they went the opposite direction than they went with the Klingons. So yeah, I was really happy with that development for Pike, and getting a little bit more context to that that piece of character progression that we know Pike is ultimately going to have. And I've heard Anson Mount talk, the fact that he's kind of in this weird spot where he's playing Pike in Act 2. Like, where he came from with being on the cage, on the bridge of the Enterprise, the captain of the ship, in the cage. Like, everything that happened there, and where he ends up. He's stuck playing him in like this middle portion, like the beginning, the end. He's filling the middle, which is an unusual thing for like an actor walking through the world to do. And he crushed it, and I think the writers crushed it too, with taking advantage of that uniqueness, that ability to play with that, and because there aren't many scenarios where you can really do that, where you're kind of in the middle with the character.
Yep.
Established character. He was the perfect character to do it with too, because he's established and he's this hallowed ground, but there's so little of him. Like, there's so much opportunity to expand on him, and you have the ability to kind of play with it a little bit, because it's not as restrictive as trying to do it with like the TOS characters. Like, even with Spock, like you have more limitations with what you can do with those characters, but with Pike you can really flex your muscles and do whatever you want for the most part. And they really did a nice job with that, I think. The other big question I would have for you with this episode is, we talked last week, and I think everybody talked about last week, the idea that is this the Borg origin story, right? With control and AI, and did this episode change your, like, does this episode make you more convinced, less convinced? Are you about the same that that's a direction they may or may not be going in? Like, how did this episode impact your feelings on that? Are you more into it, less into it? Do you think they're doing it? Do you not? Where do you stand?
Man, it's tough because I feel like not a lot. Not a lot was done to sway me either way. So I feel like I'm still at the same point I was last week. The device that was used to almost stab Burnham, the green glow, it felt kind of Borg-esque maybe.
There's an image in First Contact of the thing coming in hitting the eye at the very beginning of the movie. So there's some visual continuity there.
I didn't like the nanobots like forming that thing and getting magnetized to the floor. I wasn't a big fan of that, but
that's unusual. Yeah.
I don't know. I like I said, there was nothing to really sway me enough either way. I feel like that's where they're going.
Yeah, I think.
What do you think?
I think it's pretty. Here's what I think they're doing. I think it is that. I think that's what they're doing.
Yeah.
But I suspect that they're going to make it vague. Like, I don't think they're going to come right out and spell it out. This is the Borg. This is the beginning of the Borg. I think they're gonna leave it kind of in the same ballpark that it's in right now, so that people will bandy about and debate this for the next 53 years. Is this the beginning of the Borg? I suspect that somehow we're going to get into this, especially I think probably towards the end of this episode and even next week, I'm sure, talking about like predicting how this is all going to end. But if I had to guess right now, I suspect that what we're going to see happen is the sphere data, either with Discovery or somehow, is going to get thrown way into the future, and control, AI, all that stuff is going to get thrown way into the past, which is going to make it make sense that this could evolve someday into
the Borg,
the Borg, or give birth to the Borg somehow over the course of a long time, and that's the way to keep them from ever connecting. Like, if you don't want control to ever get the sphere data, throw in the sphere data 900 years into the future, where we kind of see Calypso, and maybe throwing control the equal amount of time back into the past somehow, pretty much seals the deal, right? Like, that's just a complete guess and complete speculation, and that could be thrown away in the first 5 minutes of next week as a possibility. But that's if my guess is that they're going to do something like that, and they're going to leave it vague. They're not going to spell it out. You're not going to see Borg drones walking around. By the end of the season, you're not going to see them fighting a Borg cube or anything like that. Like, time travel's not going to bring anything like that about. I don't think they'll be that aggressive, and I think they know. I think there's enough smart people who are tuned in enough on Star Trek social media to know that that's gonna be extraordinarily controversial. People are going to get upset.
Right.
I don't think they'll go that far, but I think they're going to leave it to the point where people can argue about it and talk about it for the next 50 years about if it actually is that, or could it not be that.
Right. I want to agree with that, but there's a lot of missing puzzle pieces. Like, why they mentioned it in the episode? Why don't they just destroy the Discovery? So there's got to be a reason why they put it in the future. It would just maybe it won't allow itself to be self-destructed.
Exactly. I think that's what's going to be. I think the sphere data has already. I think the sphere data is protecting itself to the point where it can't be, purged out of the Discovery's computer system. I think it goes to reason. I think they're going to try to self-destruct next week, but I think they're going to find that that's not going to. I think the sphere data is not going to allow that.
But then we still have a Discovery. Another season 3 of Discovery, like, on the books, like it's scheduled. So I'm not sure how this is.
How that works.
This show is built around this ship and the concept of, the mycelial network and jumping and stuff like that. But now they're gonna. I don't know.
Is it possible that the crew goes to the future with the ship?
Maybe.
Maybe that's why we never hear about Michael Burnham. She's through this. Set of events, she gets thrown with the Discovery crew X number of years into the future, and the whole thing's classified because it's, who knows? I don't know. But that's certainly, I've been thinking about that a lot too. We kind of know where the ship ends up eventually through Calypso. Right. And I think really the only question now is, to me, the logical like it's got to be one of the other things. Either the ship goes to the future without the crew, and we get season 3 on the Discovery A or another ship or something like that, or the crew goes with it, and next year it's about either the crew trying to get home back to the normal timeline, or they're there, and that's where the show goes. And I think that also kind of goes to the conversation we kind of dabbed our toe in last week about is this a 7-year show? Is this a 3-year show?
Yeah, I was just wondering.
Yeah, I think if it's a 3-year show or even a 4-year show, you know, I think it's a little easier to pull a game changer like that and say for the next season we're going to deal with fallout of this and the show's going to end. Like, you know, it's going to have more final feel to it going into that kind of storyline. You know, Battlestar Galactica, you know, is a show we've talked about on and off, and that's a show I think because of the nature of it having like this condensed 4-season run where I think they had like a pretty good picture of beginning, middle, and an end. They were able to pull the rug out a couple of times and do some pretty big game-changing things. I'm thinking back between seasons 2 and 3, don't they jump forward like nowhere near what I think Discovery might be about to do, but jump forward like 5 years. Now they're on a planet. They have a different kind of government. Baltar's the president now. Like they shake it all up. And
yeah.
I think kind of knowing where your ending is, you're only going a certain length. Maybe gives you a little bit more agency to do that, to feel more free to like throw it all into a bag and just shake up all the elements.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's all guesswork, but that's the fun of it. You know, there's enough little hints out there, and it's kind of fun that it all goes back to a short track that we saw and loved like 6 months ago now. That's like this big, you know,
question mark. Like, how does this
fit
in?
Yeah, that we've been talking about since October when it came out. Like the question has always been like, what does this mean? Why is the ship there? But, you know, as we're getting closer to the end of the season, it's starting to kind of line up, and you go, I can kind of see how this happens. It all kind of sort of makes sense.
Yeah.
But are they actually going to do it, and how are they going to do it? Like I said, it's to me, it's pretty obvious that somehow the ship's going to end up in the future. It's just a matter of is it with the crew or without the crew? All right, and are we going with the ship, or is the ship just going to go and we're not going to really hear from it again? And Calypso is like our information about where the ship ends up and what it's doing out there. I don't know. I just don't know.
I don't know either. But what do I know?
Nothing for the next 2 weeks.
Yeah.
We'll find out in 2 weeks, or probably not. We'll probably find out sometime in 2021 because we'll be left with the cliffhanger and be left hanging, I'm sure, with a lot of questions between seasons 2 and 3.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll see.
Where
do we go from there?
Yeah, what did you think of? Maybe you can jump back to, we kind of glazed over it, the Spock and Burnham
stuff on Section 31 ship.
Yeah, Section 31 ship.
I liked it a lot. First of all, did you see it coming that Gant, the tactical officer from the Shenzhou, you didn't see it coming that he was? I didn't either. Mm-hmm. People I was watching it in the room with apparently did, but I did not. I didn't see it coming until they kind of made it obvious when she starts reaching for her phaser, when she kind of pieces it together. I kind of pieced it together with her.
Didn't see it coming.
Yeah, me neither. Yeah. Me neither. I felt like, you know what, that's classic Star Trek stuff. Like, you show up to the scene of a disaster, and of course there's one guy who got into a spacesuit and survived, and that's where you get all your information from, and he works with you from, you know, that to me, like, that kind of storyline is like tropey Star Trek. Not that way necessarily, but it's something we've seen before.
Yeah.
Like, that's what happens in Star Trek. So there's always one survivor from a ship. So I was not on my toes. So I liked a lot of that. Like, what I think about with those scenes, ironically, is the first thing that comes to mind is some of that stuff you were talking about before with the nanoprobes leaving Gant's body, and kind of like that's just such unusual, like, weird imagery for Star Trek, and it's so different than And like, because in my mind, I'm definitely watching these things play out with Control, and kind of on my toes, expecting to shoot a drop that it's something to do with the Borg, and it's going to lead to the Borg. Right. And I think the reason that imagery stands out so much is, unlike a lot of the other stuff that we see, that doesn't remind me of the Borg. That's so like anti what I picture the Borg as, you know, being and doing.
Yep.
So because that leads to so many questions about, well, maybe it's not the Borg. It stands out in my mind a lot, even though I don't know how well. I don't know if it was that successful though either. Like I don't know. I wasn't totally into that part of the action sequence.
Yeah. One thing I liked about that, they kind of talked about like Michael Burnham's unpredictability, and that kind of helps me rationalize how that this time travel conundrum that they're in can be fixed, and it's not already set in stone. So I like that they kind of put that in this episode because it helps me like kind of rationalize everything, that this is unpredictable.
Yeah, and she seems to be the variable that can't be accounted for, which is what Control is kind of obsessed with. Like, I think the kind of takeaway from that storyline is that Control isn't going to feel confident in the outcome. Burnham is running around doing her thing. And why that is, and why that is still to be seen, I guess. Like, I guess her connection with the Red Angel and her proximity to the whole situation makes her unpredictable and makes her kind of an unusual element. But I get the suspicion that there's more to it than that.
Right.
That she has a bigger role to play for whatever reason. But yeah, I think back to a lot of the Spock Burnham dialogue. I love the scene.
Great banter.
Really good brother sister
in the shuttle pod too. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. A lot of cool stuff in there. I love Burnham talking about that she's not angry, she's raged. Like that was like, wow, that had some impact to it.
Right.
And Spock's answer to that is, you know, rage is the enemy of logic. Like all logic goes away as long as you're like that.
Yeah.
I think that felt very Spock to me. That felt very, very wise in a very Spock way. Yeah, I like when those two characters are on screen together.
Yes.
Pretty much without fail.
Yep.
They nailed it with Ethan Peck just as much as they nailed it with Anson Mount, I think. I don't think they could have cast those two characters any better than they did. That's one of the most pleasant surprises of the season to me, because that was such a tricky needle to thread, I think, to nail the Spock Burnham thing, because it's edging on such sacred ground, I guess, playing with the Spock backstory and bringing that character back into the fold. The pleasant surprise of the season to me is that those scenes and that relationship works as well as it does.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, for those sequences, I with Spock and Burnham on the Section 31 ship, a lot about the just the banner, the dialogue, the brother sisterness of that relationship,
right?
Really working well, and the fact that they're helping each other. I feel like Burnham was helping Spock a lot at the very beginning of this, and now the roles are kind of reversed, and Spock's trying to counsel Burnham through all the emotional turmoil that she's kind of dealing with.
Yeah.
Where is this episode? Do you think it's one of the better ones of the last handful?
Yeah, it might be. I feel like it might be top 3 material.
Mm-hmm.
I only say that because it's just for me personally. I'm big on Klingons. We get Klingons in this episode. I think the tipping point for me was, the Pike stuff and Anson Mount's performance. And I think the other A plot with Burnham and Spock, I think is strong too, with a little bit weird action sequences, but I think it comes out all right. I think it definitely top 3 for me for sure.
Yeah, it's up there for me too. One thing we didn't talk about, and maybe it speaks to how well it fares in the episode. Well, yeah, we're definitely going to talk about that. But there's another kind of little element to the storyline, which is the Tyler Laurel stuff. And as a Klingon fan and somebody who loves Discovery Klingons especially, that stuff work for you? Did you like those scenes? Do you like where those two characters are going as kind of these, kind of estranged, effed up parents?
Yeah.
Like what do you think of their dynamic? Seeing that again this season, which has kind of been absent for quite a while now.
I liked it. I loved that we got to see the D7. There was a cool money shot.
Yeah.
I like their dynamic and their relationship. I think that they do a good job of telling that there's definitely history there. But I do think that there is also like a genuine love and they care about like their child, which makes them feel like parents to me.
Yeah.
And when I see them and together and stuff like that. So no, it worked for me. I liked it.
I agree. I think that is what's most successful about this. I think their characters feel more real because they credibly they obviously have a lot of baggage with each other. Like, there's a lot to work through.
Understated of the century.
Yes. Yeah. There are a lot of reasons why they can't be together.
Right.
Really.
Right.
They can't operate successfully together.
Yep.
They can't coexist. But when they talk about their child, all that stuff kind of recedes to the background, and they're on the same page about that.
Yep.
About the well-being of the son and being concerned about what's going on with him. I love that scene at the end between Pike and the two of them, where Pike's telling them about him down on the planet.
Right.
And you get that sense. And I like the complexity of the relationship, and like at the end of that scene, I'm not left feeling, oh, these two people are good to go. Like they'll be good together now. Like they're going to be on the same page because they got this information. No, they have big problems, and they're not going to be able to be okay together.
Right.
But they do have this commonality, this link that's always going to be there. And I think there's something relatable to that is pretty universal, and I think benefits those characters a lot.
Yes.
Makes them weirdly human, even though they're not really human.
Yeah.
And there's a line in there somewhere, I think between Laurel and Tyler, Laurel, like, you of all people should know that two truths can be true or something.
Yeah, I was like, oh.
Just like, so, yeah. That's good stuff. And I see a lot of talk out there. This a lot. Some people kind of over Tyler and feel like he's kind of unnecessary, and is like drag on episodes. But I like the character. I like the dilemma he's in, like the lack of identity. I think that's an interesting thing to play with. And I wish they did more with it. I think they could take advantage more than they do, honestly. But I'm glad he's there, and I enjoy the character. So.
Yeah, agreed. So do I. And if they do a Section 31 show in the future, he's got to be involved.
Yeah, maybe he's off Discovery and on that. He's Georgiou's right-hand man.
Yeah.
They seem to be. We didn't get it in this episode, but we certainly got it last week. Seemed to be building like a little bit of a rapport there between those two characters.
Yeah.
And that works too. Like Georgiou is another one that is kind of left without an identity now. She's got this past that she kind of has to hide and isn't really a part of her anymore. But it's really who she is. But at the same, but on the outside and dealing with most people, she's got to pretend to be somebody else. She's got to pretend to be this other Philippa Georgiou that is completely opposite of her.
Yep.
And so it makes sense that her and Tyler would kind of see eye to eye and have some common ground to be able to work together on. So I suspect that might be maybe where they're going with that. Maybe we see Tyler on the Section 31 show someday.
Yeah.
Working with Georgiou.
Yep.
What about that teaser for next week? Did you see the money shot?
Yes.
There's a big time money shot in that teaser.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts?
It's exciting. I think this season is going to be good on rewatch because I already want to watch the next episode, which was I felt it was the same way last week. I was itching for another episode, so I think it does its job. It looks like we're coming to the climax of the show. Obviously, I think there's gonna be some big things coming next week, so it'll be fun to talk about.
Yeah, looks like we're gonna get Discovery and the Enterprise, doing battle together, fighting side by side, and we got a little shot of the Enterprise bridge very briefly, which I personally thought looked great. From what very little we saw, I want to see more. Obviously, I want to see what it all looks like, and I'm sure we're going to get that. But there was something cool about seeing number one sitting where she sits in the cage and in the menagerie.
Yep.
If you pause it at just the right minute, like right when the shot starts, you can kind of see the sort of captain's chair, just a little glimpse of it, and it sure looks like an Enterprise captain's chair. Mm-hmm. It's got the red, which Bridge in the Cage was not red; it was black mostly. Like didn't have those red highlights, but. Yeah. I'll live. I can support. It looks like the TOS Enterprise to me. And I'll be getting down with that. So, I'm excited for next week and the next 2 weeks because I think we're going to get a lot of good stuff with the Enterprise. And there's a lot to wrap up. We spent a big chunk of this episode was us kind of talking about predicting come at the end here and where we're left at the end of the season. And in these next 2 episodes, I guess we're going to pretty much find out where that's all going. So they have to resolve a lot of things and. I'm sure there's going to be balls to the wall action and all kinds of space battles and fun stuff like that. So, I can't wait. I think we're going to be in for some good stuff, and I think I have no doubt that we're going to be left with a lot of infuriating questions too. Though I think we're going to be left hanging going into season 3 for way too long. But I'm ready for it though.
Yep. Yeah. Anything else about the episode that you want to talk about?
No, I just to echo you. I think top 3 for the season feels about right. Maybe top 4 if I was tying it all up. I don't know. It's up there though. To me, it's better than the last couple have been. It's more in the conversation with like If Memory Serves and Project Daedalus to me, which are 2 episodes that I have pretty high up on my list. But a lot of that might be a lot of that's lifted up by some of the Pike stuff. The emotional impact of the Pike stuff really does elevate it. Really good stuff. A lot of good in this one. Mm-hmm. So definitely one of the highlights of the season, if you ask me.
Yep.
And I think it validates the choice of Pike on the show. I think what you saw this week puts the nail in the coffin that at the end of the day that was worthwhile. Like it wasn't gratuitous, it wasn't fan service, it wasn't hey we can do this because of where we sit in the timeline. Right. Let's just do it for doing its sake, just to be sexy and cool. Star Trek. They did something with the character and added some context to what we already knew, which, like I've said, at least for the first 2 seasons, has seemingly been the mission of
Discovery.
Yeah. So mission accomplished.
Yep. Any Star Trek content that you like to mention?
Good question.
I don't have any. I feel like it's lately there hasn't been any that kind of jump out at me. I've just been a little bit on the back burner, at least for a little while, about Star Trek content and podcasts and YouTube and stuff like that. So,
I hear you. I definitely go through those phases myself. I listened to a Melodic Treks episode. Zach Moore, who's one of the co-hosts of Standard Orbit on Trek FM, they talked about the Star Trek 3, The Search for Spock score by James Horner. Which, you know me, I'm a film score that show a lot of the time. And that was a good episode for sure. I listened to... or something else. It's on my queue. I haven't listened to it yet, but Trek Ranks' episode this week is... top 5 Neelix episodes, which I can't wait to just hear what people have to say. I'm expecting a lot of, I feel like there have to be some deep cut kind of choices on that, because some of Neelix's best moments are in episodes that are not that's a Neelix episode.
Specifically, Neelix episode. So
some of his episodes I'm not totally fond of. Some are really good. I have some that I really do like a lot. But in just kind of toying around, what would my top 5 be? I find myself thinking about all right, where's a really good Neelix moment in an episode that he's not really featured in? And I'm sure there are people on that panel who find some of those moments.
Yeah.
Pick those episodes. So I'm really eager to listen to it, but I haven't yet.
Yeah,
so
me too.
Jordan's in the room, and I know you shouldn't be, Jordan, because you're not. So hopefully you're very passively listening and not taking away too many spoilers. But yeah, film scores all the way for sure. I do agree with that.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
One thing that I'll mention. I don't have any.
Oh, you already said. Yeah, you said that. Yeah. Okay.
That we passed our 2-year mark doing this.
We did.
And I just want to say thank you to all the Trek Life crew members and Bill for making this such a great time. So.
Yeah, we met a lot of cool people along the way. Certainly, there's some people that I kind of knew before, but I've gotten to know better. You know, people we've had on the show like Thad and Rob and Jordan. You know, other guests we've had, Danielle, Dan Harder. You know, we've had some really cool guests that we've kind of gotten to know, and other people who are in the chat, you know, fairly consistently, that we've gotten to know that way too. So that's part of this, is kind of getting to know the people, I think, and yeah, definitely thankful for everybody who takes part. You know, whether it's, you know, once in a while or, you know, every week, we definitely appreciate it.
Yep. That being said, you guys know the drill. The discussion does not have to stop here. Definitely come over to Twitter. Best place to kind of get into the discussion and keep it going. Discord is also a great place. Bill mentioned the Discord channel about throwing in his rankings a couple times every other week or so. So that's been fun. Yeah, Facebook and all that jazz. You guys know the drill. I say this every week, but yeah. We'll be back next week to talk about the next Discovery episode. I'm going to be honest, both Bill and I are looking forward to kind of taking a step back from Discovery and get back into our roots, into kind of exploring not just Discovery, but other Star Trek stuff. So look forward to that as we kind of wrap up season 2.
We have 2 episodes left of Discovery. And then we figure the last week in April will be like a season wrap up. You know, we may or may not roll out some episode rankings that week. And then as we get into the beginning of May, we'll be into our old school. Could talk about anything. We could be talking about TOS, Voyager, you know, combinations of everything. You know, all kinds of conversations come back into the fold. So we're definitely looking forward to that. So.
Yeah. Yep. All right. We'll see you guys next week.
Yep. Thanks for watching.